is the hub of global diplomacy. As G20 president, India is hosting the foreign ministers of the G20, the top diplomats of the world's 20 biggest economies. Some of them are allies, others arch rivals. The day began with handshakes. Let me show you some pictures. These are the foreign ministers of the US, Russia and China. They're all in Delhi shaking hands with their Indian counterpart, Dr. S. Jaishankar. They're at war in Ukraine, but attending talks in India. It is a big deal. Prime Minister Modi made a personal appeal for consensus today, but it fell on deaf ears, it seems. There is no consensus. Russia and America came face to face. They talked at each other.
There were issues, and I think the issues, I would say, very frankly, concerned the Ukraine conflict, on which there were divergences. So on the bulk of the issues, we were able to get an outcome document. There was a chair summary because there were differences on the Ukraine issue, which we could not reconcile between various parties who held differing positions.
Today, the top diplomats of the US and Russia were in the same room for the first time in almost a year. The daggers were drawn. America's Blinken tried to rally more support for Ukraine. Russia's Lavrov tried to mount a counterattack.
End this war of aggression. Engage in meaningful diplomacy that can produce a just and durable peace. President Zelensky has put forward a 10-point plan for a just and durable peace. The United States stand ready to support Ukraine through diplomacy to end the war on this basis. President Putin, however, has demonstrated zero interest in engaging, saying there's nothing to even talk about unless and until Ukraine accepts, and I quote, the new territorial realities.
By making a lot of rhetorical statements, they wanted to put at the forefront the problem, the situation around Ukraine, which they present under the guise of the so-called Russian aggression. It did not yield anything good. The discussion, at least in regards of the Western countries' speeches, the G7 countries, they were getting very emotional in their statements, and it all was damaging the normal process of discussing the issues that are really important for the G20 agenda.
Their fight continued behind the cameras too. Reports say Blinken and Lavrov met each other. It wasn't a scheduled interaction. The leaders spoke briefly to each other. This is their first one-on-one interaction since the war in Ukraine began. And what was discussed? Blinken is said to have made 3 points to Lavrov. Number one, the US will continue to support Ukraine. Number two, Russia should rejoin the New START treaty, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, START. It's a pact about nuclear weapons. The US and Russia are both signatories. They have the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. The treaty is designed to restrict deployment of nukes by each side, but last month, Russian President Putin decided to suspend his country's participation. Blinken told Lavrov that Russia should join again. And his third message was this: the US wants Russia to release Paul Whelan. He's an American citizen imprisoned in Russia. He's an American Marine. He faces charges of spying. He was arrested in 2018 and is currently serving a 16-year jail sentence. This was America's message. 3 points. What about Russia? What did Lavrov say? What was his reaction? The Russian foreign minister was scathing in his attacks. He accused Western diplomats of derailing the meeting in an effort to scapegoat Russia. Lavrov presented his criticism in the form of an apology to India. Allow me to quote from what he said. I want to apologize to the Indian presidency and to our colleagues from countries of the global south for the obscene behavior of some Western delegations, which have turned the G20's agenda into a farce. You see, India's goals for the G20 presidency are ambitious. Considering the differences, the task for the Indian diplomats is cut out. The war in Ukraine could derail India's agenda.